The massive research vessel slipped through space like a silver needle threading through black fabric. Its smooth hull reflected the distant stars as it approached the blue-green planet that would become their next study subject. The ship's computer had already classified this world as a basic wildlife preserve with limited intelligent life. Just another primitive planet to add to their growing database of biological specimens. Lead researcher Gray stood at the main observation deck, his tall frame reflected in the curved glass as he watched Earth grow larger in view. His large eyes, adapted for the dim light of his homeworld, took in every detail of the approaching planet. The readings from their initial scans puzzled him. They showed signs of primitive technology, but nothing that suggested real intelligence. Researcher Gray, the preliminary scans are complete, announced tech expert White, her silvery skin gleaming under the soft blue lights of the bridge. We've detected millions of species, but most seem to be simple creatures. The dominant species appears to be a basic tool-using primate. Gray nodded, his antenna twitching with excitement. This was his 100th survey mission, but each new world still filled him with wonder. What about those geometric patterns we detected from orbit? He asked, pointing to the regular shapes that covered parts of the continents. Simple nests, White replied confidently. Much like the hive structures we've seen on other worlds, these primates seem to build communal shelters, but they're nothing compared to the architecture we've seen from truly advanced species. The ship's AI continued to catalog the various life forms below, sorting them into familiar categories. Gray watched as images of Earth's creatures flashed across the main screen. Furry quadrupeds, flying creatures, swimming beings, and countless small organisms. Nothing seemed particularly remarkable or dangerous. Launch the atmospheric probes, Gray commanded. Let's get a closer look at these primates and their nesting habits. Small silver spheres detached from the main ship, descending through Earth's atmosphere. They transmitted back images of cities, which the ship's AI promptly classified as large-scale communal nests. The regular arrangement of buildings was dismissed as instinctive behavior, much like the geometric precision of beehives. Look at their transport systems, commented Assistant Researcher Black, pointing to the highways and railways. They've developed basic resource distribution networks, but nothing suggesting true technological advancement. No energy shields, no gravity manipulation, not even basic atmospheric processors. Gray felt a mix of disappointment and curiosity. He had hoped this world might offer something new, but it seemed to be yet another planet of primitive life forms. Still, there was something about Earth that nagged at him, something in the data that didn't quite fit their usual parameters. What's the atmospheric composition? He asked, more out of habit than real interest. Mostly nitrogen and oxygen, White answered. But there's something odd. There are traces of artificial compounds in the atmosphere. Some areas show high concentrations of processed materials. Gray's antenna straightened in surprise. Artificial compounds. Could we be dealing with a pre-industrial species then? Unlikely, Black interjected. Our scans show no signs of unified planetary governance, no space installations, and no defense systems. These compounds are probably just byproducts of their basic tool use. The team continued their preliminary survey, their advanced technology gathering data about every aspect of Earth's biosphere. They noticed the regular movements of the primates, their crude vehicles, and their primitive attempts at agriculture. Everything was cataloged, classified, and dismissed as unremarkable. Prepare the collection teams, Gray finally ordered. We'll start with basic specimen gathering from various ecosystems. Remember our primary directive: minimal interaction with the dominant species. We don't want to disturb their natural development. As the crew began their preparations, none of them noticed the small detail that would soon prove crucial. Their defensive shields were calibrated for energy weapons and physical impacts, not biological agents. They had no way of knowing that Earth's deadliest weapons came in the smallest packages. The collection teams were assembled, their equipment checked and double-checked. They would start with the most diverse ecosystems first, the rainforests, oceans, and something their computers called the Australian continent. Gray felt confident that this would be a routine mission, just like all the others. He had no idea that he was about to stumble into the most dangerous planet in this sector of space, or that the seemingly primitive primates were actually the apex predators of a world that had turned evolution into an arms race. Earth was about to teach these advanced aliens a lesson in humility, and the class was about to begin. The collection team's pod touched down in the red dust of the Australian outback just as the summer sun reached its peak. Team Leader Red stepped out first, his protective suit glinting in the harsh sunlight. The heat sensors in his suit immediately registered the extreme temperature, but he wasn't worried. Their technology could handle any environmental challenge. "This seems like an ideal starting point," Red said to his team of 4 as they unloaded their specimen containers. "Low population density, diverse wildlife, and minimal chance of contact with the primitive primates." The team spread out their equipment, setting up the containment fields that would help them safely capture and study the local wildlife. Their scanners showed hundreds of life forms within range, most of them small and seemingly harmless. The ship's database had classified this continent as a relatively safe zone for specimen collection. Yellow, the team's biology expert, was the first to notice something wrong. She bent down to examine what looked like a thin brown rope in the grass. Before anyone could react, the rope moved with lightning speed. The eastern brown snake, one of Earth's deadliest serpents, struck through the supposedly impenetrable suit material like it wasn't even there. Yellow's scream caught everyone off guard. Their medical officer, Green, rushed to help but watched in horror as the venom overwhelmed their advanced medical systems. Nothing in their database had prepared them for this, a simple organic compound that could bypass all their defenses. "Emergency evacuation," Red shouted, but it was too late for Yellow. Their suits, designed to withstand plasma weapons and radiation, had proved useless against a creature less than 2 meters long. The remaining team members huddled together, suddenly very aware of how alien and hostile this environment was. Their scanners, recalibrated after Yellow's death, now showed dozens of potentially lethal creatures within their immediate vicinity. "We need to pack up and move to a safer location," Red ordered, trying to maintain calm. They began gathering their equipment, but fate had other plans. Blue screamed next. A tiny funnel web spider, disturbed by their activities, had crawled into a gap in his suit's joints. Its fangs, evolved to pierce the hard shells of insects, had no trouble penetrating the flexible material of their supposedly advanced protective gear. The team watched in helpless horror as Blue collapsed, their medical technology proving useless against the spider's powerful neurotoxin. 2 team members lost in less than an hour. It was unthinkable. "Back to the pod," Red commanded, his voice shaking. But as they turned to flee, they faced a new terror. A group of kangaroos watched them from nearby, their powerful legs and sharp claws suddenly looking far more threatening than their initial scans had suggested. The 3 surviving team members made a dash for their landing pod, but their path took them too close to the water's edge. None of them saw the box jellyfish drifting in the shallows. When Purple stumbled into the water, the tentacles wrapped around his leg. Even through the suit, the venom found its way in. His death was the quickest yet. Red and Green finally reached the pod, their hearts pounding and their confidence shattered. As they prepared for emergency liftoff, Green noticed something stuck to his suit, a small tick, somehow managing to drain blood through their advanced fabric. "Impossible," he whispered, staring at the tiny creature. "Our suits are supposed to be impenetrable." The pod lifted off, carrying the 2 traumatized survivors back to the mothership. Through the viewport, they watched the Australian landscape recede below them. It looked peaceful from up here, hiding its deadly nature behind a veil of natural beauty. In the ship's medical bay, Gray listened to Red's report with growing concern. "Everything down there is lethal," Red explained, still shaking. "The smallest creatures can kill us. Our technology, our defenses, they mean nothing against their natural weapons. Gray looked at the data from their brief expedition. The ship's computer was rapidly updating its classification of Earth's creatures, adding warning after warning. The preliminary assessment of Earth as a safe collection zone was being dramatically revised. "We lost 3 team members," Red concluded, "to creatures we wouldn't have even considered threats on any other world. This planet is different. It's not just dangerous, it's deadly beyond anything we've ever encountered." Gray nodded slowly, his antenna drooping with worry. If this was what they found in just one small area of one continent, what other horrors did this planet hold? And more importantly, how had the primitive primates managed to survive in such a lethal environment? Scout Master Blue stood at the edge of their landing site, staring up at the towering canopy of the Amazon rainforest. After the disaster in Australia, they had redesigned their protective suits, adding multiple layers of filtering and strengthening the outer shell. This time, they were prepared, or so they thought. "Remember, nothing is too small to be dangerous," Blue warned his team as they activated their improved scanning equipment. The dense jungle around them teemed with life, their sensors struggling to track the countless species moving through the undergrowth. The team moved carefully, their boots barely touching the ground as they used their gravity tech to hover slightly above the forest floor. They had learned their lesson about Earth's creatures. No contact was safe contact. "Look at these readings," Brown said, pointing to his scanner. "The biodiversity here is off the charts. There are more species in this single square kilometer than on entire planets we studied." They set up their research station in a small clearing, keeping their equipment elevated on floating platforms. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until Orange noticed something moving on one of the tree trunks. "What are those?" he asked, zooming in with his visual enhancers. A line of small insects was marching up the tree. Bullet ants, though the aliens didn't know that name yet. Brown moved closer to study them, confident in his new protective suit. "Fascinating. They seem to be a social species, like many we've encountered before." The bullet ant colony, disturbed by the alien presence, went into defensive mode. What happened next would become legendary in alien research circles. The ants, living up to their name, launched themselves at the intruders. Their stings, rated as the most painful of any insect on Earth, penetrated the improved suits as if they were made of paper. Brown's screams echoed through the forest as thousands of stings hit him at once. The pain was beyond anything their medical systems could handle. He fell to the ground, thrashing, as more ants swarmed over him. "Emergency protocols," Blue shouted, activating their sonic deterrent field. But the ants weren't alone. The vibrations disturbed a nearby colony of Africanized honeybees, which emerged from their hive in an angry cloud. The team scattered, their carefully planned research forgotten in the face of this new threat. Orange ran straight into a patch of fungi, his suit's sensors failing to identify the microscopic spores that now covered him. Within hours, those spores would begin growing inside his suit's ventilation system. Purple tried to help Brown, but in doing so, exposed herself to a different threat. A small cut in her suit, caused by sharp vegetation, allowed in bacteria that their medical systems had never encountered. The flesh-eating bacteria of the Amazon had claimed another victim. Blue watched in horror as his team fell apart. Their advanced technology, even with the improvements made after Australia, was proving useless against Earth's microscopic warriors. The forest, which had seemed merely dense and humid at first, revealed itself as a complex web of deadly life forms, each evolved to kill in its own unique way. "Return to the pod," Blue ordered, but the path back was now blocked by a swarm of angry bees. They tried to circle around, only to encounter more bullet ants. Every route seemed blocked by something deadly. In their panic, they failed to notice the spiders descending on silk threads above them. The Brazilian wandering spiders, drawn by the commotion, added their venom to the mix of threats. By the time Blue managed to get the surviving members of his team back to their pod, Half were already showing signs of various toxins and infections. Their medical bay, designed to handle radiation burns and plasma wounds, was useless against the cocktail of natural poisons now running through their systems. As they lifted off, Blue sent an urgent message to the mothership. "This planet," he reported, his voice shaking, "it's not just the visible threats we need to fear. The very air is filled with deadly spores. The smallest cuts can let in bacteria that eat through our flesh. Even our most advanced filters can't stop all the ways this world has evolved to kill." In orbit, Gray received the report with growing dread. First Australia, now this. Every expedition was revealing new horrors, new ways that Earth's life forms could defeat their supposedly superior technology. And they still hadn't even begun to understand how the native primates, humans, had managed to survive and thrive in this deadly environment. The truth was becoming clear. They weren't dealing with a simple wilderness planet. They were dealing with a world where evolution had created perfect killing machines at every scale, from microscopic to massive. And somehow, impossibly, the humans had become the masters of this death world. The deep-sea research vessel glided beneath the waves of Earth's Pacific Ocean. After the disasters on land, the alien research team hoped the ocean would prove safer. Marine specialist Silver guided their submersible deeper, its lights piercing the growing darkness of the depths. "Water covers most of this planet," Silver told his team. "Surely here, in this stable environment, we'll find more predictable life forms." The other team members nodded, trying to forget about their lost colleagues in Australia and the Amazon. Their vessel was the pride of the Seeker fleet, designed to withstand the crushing pressures of gas-giant atmospheres and the acidic oceans of distant worlds. Its sensors probed the dark waters, recording the strange life forms that drifted past their viewing ports. "Look at this reading," Braun said, pointing to their instruments. "There's a large creature approaching from below." The team gathered around the screens, watching as a massive shape moved toward them. The great white shark emerged from the gloom like a living torpedo. Before anyone could react, it slammed into their vessel, testing it with its powerful jaws. The team watched in shock as the shark's teeth left deep scratches in their supposedly indestructible hull. "Impossible," Gold shouted, checking the damage readings. "That organic material shouldn't be able to damage our alloys." The shark circled back for another attack, its primitive brain registering the submersible as potential prey. Silver tried to maneuver away, but the shark was faster than their computers had predicted. It struck again, this time finding a weak point where two hull plates joined. Warning alarms filled the cabin as water began to spray through the breach. "Emergency ascent," Silver ordered, but more shapes were appearing on their screens. A whole group of sharks, drawn by the commotion, had arrived. The submersible's engines strained as Silver tried to guide them to safety. They managed to escape the sharks, but their relief was short-lived. As they approached a coral reef to make repairs, they encountered something even deadlier. A cone snail, small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, was disturbed by their presence. Its tiny harpoon-like tooth shot out, somehow penetrating their backup suits through a maintenance hatch. Bronze collapsed instantly, the cone snail's venom proving more potent than any chemical weapon they had encountered in their travels. The team's medical officer couldn't even begin to analyze the complex mixture of toxins before Bronze stopped breathing. "We need to surface," Gold urged, but Silver shook his head. Their damaged hull wouldn't survive a rapid ascent. They needed to move slowly and find a shallow spot for repairs. Their path took them into warmer waters, where they encountered a new terror. A blue-ringed octopus, barely larger than a human hand, squeezed through the damaged hull section. Its rings flashed brilliant blue, a warning that the alien visitors didn't understand until it was too late. Gold reached out to capture what seemed like a fascinating specimen, but the octopus bit through his protective glove. The venom paralyzed him within minutes, adding another name to their growing list of casualties. The remaining team members huddled in the front of the vessel, sealed off from the flooding rear compartments. Their sensors continued to report the incredible variety of life around them. Each species seemed to have evolved its own unique way of killing. "Even the coral can kill us," Silver muttered, looking at readings from a box jellyfish floating nearby. "Everything in this ocean has evolved to be a perfect weapon." They limped their vessel toward the surface, but their troubles weren't over. A Portuguese man-o-war drifted into their path, its tentacles wrapping around their external sensors. The sensors immediately began to short out, the creature's simple stinging cells somehow damaging their advanced technology. When they finally reached the surface, their vessel was half flooded, their team was decimated, and their confidence was completely shattered. Above them, the massive research ship hung in the sky, a reminder of how far they'd fallen from their initial arrogance. "This world's oceans," Silver reported to Gray via their emergency beacon, "they're not just bodies of water. They're battlefields where evolution has created weapons we can't even understand. Our technology, our science, it means nothing here. These creatures have spent millions of years perfecting their killing methods, and we're just their latest targets." In orbit, Gray added the ocean report to their growing database of Earth's horrors. Each environment they explored revealed new dangers, new ways to die. But the greatest mystery remained. How had humans not only survived but thrived in these lethal waters? The answer, when it came, would change their understanding of life itself. The African sun beat down on the remains of the alien research team as they scrambled away from the riverbank. Their latest disaster had started with what seemed like a simple mission, studying one of the large gray animals wallowing in the water. The hippo had looked slow and peaceful until it wasn't. "Run!" shouted lead researcher Pink, watching in horror as their hover platform crumpled like paper beneath the charging hippo's weight. The team scattered, their advanced weapons proving useless against 4 tons of angry river horse. That's when they saw him, a local human walking calmly along the riverbank, fishing rod in hand. The aliens froze, their survival training forgotten in the face of this impossible sight. The human was wearing nothing but simple cloth coverings, no protective suit, no energy shields, not even basic armor. The hippo noticed the human too, but something strange happened. The massive beast simply snorted and moved away, returning to its wallow. The human didn't even flinch. "How?" whispered Pink, forgetting their directive about avoiding contact with the natives. "How are you still alive?" The human fisherman looked up, seeming more curious than frightened by the strange beings in their protective suits. He smiled and pointed to a safe path away from the river. "You folks must be new here," he said with a chuckle. "Everyone knows not to get between a hippo and deep water." The aliens followed him to safer ground, their sensors frantically trying to understand how this human could survive so casually in such a deadly environment. As they walked, they passed several snakes that the human pointed out and easily avoided. "You learn to watch where you step," he explained, noticing their nervous movements. "Been doing it since I was a kid. Those puff adders like to sunbathe right on the path." At his small camp, the aliens received an even bigger shock. In a secure container, the human kept several snakes that he milked for venom. The same kind of venom that had killed 3 of their researchers in Australia. "The antivenoms need fresh venom to make," he explained, handling the deadly snakes with casual expertise. "Been doing this job for 15 years now. Only been bit twice." Pink's translator struggled with the concept. This human didn't just survive among Earth's deadliest creatures. He caught them, handled them, and extracted their venoms. Even more incredibly, humans had developed countermeasures to these toxins. Their amazement grew when a small group of human researchers arrived at the camp. They watched in disbelief as these humans dove into the same waters where their submersible had been damaged, swimming with crocodiles to study them. "You just need to understand their behavior," one of the human researchers explained, drying off after a dive. "Most animals aren't actually out to get you. They're just doing their thing. You learn to respect them, keep your distance when needed, and know what to do if something goes wrong." The aliens observed in silence as the humans went about their work. They handled venomous snakes with simple hooks and bags. They tracked lions on foot, armed with nothing more than cameras and notebooks. They collected specimens of poisonous plants with bare hands, knowing exactly where and how to touch them safely. "Look at their medical kit," Pink whispered to their team's doctor. The human first aid kit seemed laughably simple compared to their advanced medical bay. Yet it contained specific treatments for dozens of venoms, toxins, and infections, all developed through centuries of trial and error. The humans shared their food that evening, telling stories about close encounters with Earth's deadliest creatures. Each tale made the aliens' antennae twitch with fear, but the humans laughed and joked about their experiences. "Last month," one researcher said casually, "I had to pull my colleague out of quicksand while a black mamba was swimming toward us. That was an interesting day at work." Pink sent an urgent message to the mothership. "The humans," the report read, "they're not just surviving here. They've mastered this death world. They don't dominate through superior technology or physical strength. They've done it through observation, adaptation, and an incredible ability to learn from their mistakes." As night fell, the aliens watched their human hosts prepare for sleep, seemingly unconcerned about the lions roaring in the distance or the deadly spiders that crawled nearby. These weren't the primitive primates they had initially classified. These were creatures who had evolved something far more powerful than venoms or claws. They had developed intelligence that turned every threat into a tool, every predator into a subject for study. The true apex predators of Earth, they realized, didn't need biological weapons. They had something far more dangerous: the ability to understand, adapt to, and even control all the other deadly creatures on their world. The emergency meeting room aboard the mothership hummed with nervous energy as the surviving research team members gathered around the central holographic display. Lead researcher Gray stood before the three-dimensional image of Earth, his antenna drooping with the weight of their discoveries. "We have lost 12 researchers," Gray began, his voice heavy. "Our most advanced technology has been defeated by creatures smaller than my hand. But that's not the most important thing we've learned about this world." The display shifted to show images of their encounters: the brown snake in Australia, the bullet ants in the Amazon, the great white shark that damaged their submersible. Each image brought uncomfortable movements from the assembled team members. "Look at these readings again," White said, stepping forward to manipulate the display. "Every environment on this planet is a battlefield. The creatures haven't just evolved to survive. They've evolved to kill. Even their plants are deadly." The images changed to show their recent observations of humans: the casual way they handled venomous snakes, their comfortable proximity to large predators, their ability to swim in waters filled with lethal creatures. "We made a terrible mistake in our initial classification," Gray admitted. "We saw their buildings and thought they were simple nests. We saw their vehicles and thought they were primitive. We were wrong. So terribly wrong." The display showed a human hospital next, where doctors treated snake bites and spider stings with practiced ease. It showed laboratories where scientists studied the very venoms that had killed several alien researchers. It showed humans keeping deadly creatures as pets, studying them, even collecting their venoms for medicine. These humans, Blue added, still wearing bandages from the Amazon expedition, they don't just survive in this death world. They study it. They understand it. They've turned the very things that kill them into tools for survival. The room fell silent as Gray brought up their species classification database. Earth sat in the primitive world category, but as they watched, he began to revise its status. "Think about what we've seen," Gray continued. "These humans live on a planet where every environment is lethal. Their oceans are filled with living weapons. Their lands are covered in venomous creatures. Their air carries deadly spores. Even their plants can kill with a touch." The display showed scenes from human history: cave paintings of hunters facing massive predators, early medical texts about treating venoms, modern laboratories developing antivenoms. They didn't develop energy shields or atmospheric processors. White realized aloud. They didn't need to. They developed something far more valuable, the ability to adapt to any threat, to learn from every death, to turn their understanding of these deadly creatures into a survival advantage. The images shifted again, showing humans treating deadly diseases, developing medicines from toxic plants, and even using modified venoms to create new medical treatments. Look at their medical science, the team's doctor pointed out. They don't just heal wounds, they've learned to use the deadliest substances on their planet to save lives. They've turned venoms into vaccines, toxins into treatments. Gray nodded, making more adjustments to Earth's classification. They survived multiple extinction events, he added. Their planet tried to kill them with ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and each time they adapted and grew stronger. The final images showed humans exploring their world's most hostile environments, diving in shark-filled waters, tracking lions across the savannah, studying the deadliest creatures up close. We came here thinking we were the advanced species, Gray concluded. But look at us, hiding in our protective suits, defeated by ants and snakes, running from their large animals. Meanwhile, humans walk among these dangers with nothing but their intelligence and learned experience to protect them. The new classification appeared on the main display. Earth, Class 10 Death World. Native species, humans, advanced adaptive apex predators. But what does this mean for our mission? Someone asked from the back of the room. Gray's antenna straightened with determination. It means we need to completely revise our understanding of intelligence and civilization. These humans, they're not primitive tool users. They're the supreme adapters of a world that should be impossible to survive on, and if they ever decide to leave their planet. He let the thought hang in the air. Every alien in the room understood the implications. A species that could master such a deadly world, that could turn its lethal arsenal into tools for survival. What would they be capable of once they reached the stars? The emergency meeting ended with a new mission directive. Earth was no longer to be treated as a wildlife preserve. It was now classified as the homeworld of one of the most dangerous and remarkable species in the known galaxy. The Grand Chamber of the Seeker High Council fell silent as lead researcher Gray stepped forward to deliver his final report on Earth. The massive screens behind him displayed images of the blue-green planet that had changed everything they thought they knew about civilization. Honorable Council, Gray began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. I stand before you to report the most significant discovery in our exploration history. We must immediately revise our understanding of what makes a species advanced. The council members leaned forward in their floating chairs as Gray activated the first display sequence. Images of Earth's deadliest creatures filled the screens: spiders, snakes, sharks, and microscopic killers that had claimed the lives of their researchers. This planet, which we initially classified as a simple wildlife preserve, is the most lethal world we have ever encountered. Every square meter contains something that can kill. The air carries deadly spores. The water holds countless lethal creatures. Even the plants have evolved to be weapons. The council murmured as Gray showed footage from their failed expeditions: the Australian disaster, the Amazon horror, the ocean catastrophe. But then he shifted to the images that had changed everything. Humans living alongside these deadly creatures. But the true discovery isn't the planet's lethal nature, Gray continued. It's the beings who have mastered it. These humans, whom we mistakenly classified as primitive tool users, have achieved something we never thought possible. They've turned a death world into their playground. The screens showed humans handling venomous snakes, swimming with sharks, studying deadly creatures up close. It showed their hospitals treating lethal bites and stings, their laboratories developing cures from the very toxins that killed. While we focused on developing energy shields and atmospheric processors, humans took a different path. They developed something far more valuable: the ability to understand and adapt to any threat. They don't just survive their world's dangers. They study them, learn from them, and even use them to heal themselves. One council member raised a glowing tentacle, but they have no space program, no unified planetary government. How can they be considered advanced? Gray's antenna twitched with excitement. That's exactly what we need to reconsider. Look at their history. The screen showed human evolution, their survival through ice ages and extinction events. These beings survived multiple planetary catastrophes. Each time their world tried to kill them, they adapted and grew stronger. The images shifted to show human medical facilities. They've learned to cure diseases that would wipe out other species. They've developed treatments using the deadliest substances on their planet. They don't need force fields. They've developed immunity to most of their world's toxins. Another council member spoke up. Are you suggesting we make contact? I'm suggesting more than that, Gray replied. I'm recommending we initiate diplomatic relations immediately. These humans are on the verge of space travel. When they leave their death world, they will be the most well-prepared species in the galaxy for survival in harsh environments. The screen showed humans exploring Earth's most extreme environments. Deep oceans, frozen peaks, burning deserts. They can survive anywhere. They can adapt to any threat. And most importantly, they've learned to turn their planet's deadliest weapons into tools for advancement. The council chamber erupted in discussion as Gray delivered his final recommendation. Earth must be reclassified as a Class 10 death world, and humans must be recognized as an advanced species. More than that, they should be invited to join the Galactic Council as specialists in survival and adaptation. The High Council leader raised all four hands for silence. What you're suggesting is unprecedented. No species has ever been invited to join the Council before achieving space travel. No species has ever mastered a death world before, Gray countered. Think about what they could teach us. Our researchers died from simple snake bites, while humans have learned to make medicines from those same venoms. We lost a submersible to a shark while they swim with them for recreation. They don't just survive. They thrive in conditions that killed our best-equipped teams. The chamber fell silent as the council leader considered the proposal. Finally, she spoke. Very well. We will send a diplomatic mission to Earth. But this time, she added with a hint of humor, perhaps we should approach them directly instead of trying to study their wildlife first. As the council chamber emptied, Gray looked one last time at the images of Earth. They had come seeking to study primitive life forms on a backwater planet. Instead, they had discovered the most remarkable species in the galaxy, beings who had turned evolution itself into their greatest weapon. The report was filed, the classification was changed, and Earth took its place in galactic records, not as a wildlife preserve, but as the cradle of one of the most formidable species ever encountered. Humans, the masters of adaptation, the survivors of the galaxy's deadliest world.